So my name is Lori Currens. I'm a very proud 1985 alum of Millikin University. It is my home. It is the only place I've ever chosen to work and be a part of a community. It is an amazing place filled with amazing people, and I hope today we can tell some of that story about how women have come to find their own place here at Millikin, especially in the world of athletics. So can you imagine loving to do something but being told that you couldn't just because you were a girl or just because of some other trait or characteristic? That's how women must have felt. There was certainly opportunity to play, but there was an opportunity to be recognized as an athlete, to be identified as an athlete as our male counterparts were.
Well, I always loved physical education in high school, and it was between becoming a physical educator or an art educator. I decided to go into physical education freshman year, and then I became involved in the sorority life. And that's where my drive to do things at Griswold in the evening competitively. And I would round up girls to play basketball.
So growing up as a female, right as Title IX was coming into effect, there were always more available avenues for the boys than for the girls. When I ran in school, I was a very fast runner, and if I kept up with the boys, I got held accountable as a boy. It was not right for me as a girl to be as strong or as fast as the boys.
Growing up pre-Title IX, we didn't really have female role models. You know, there wasn't really, female athletic role models because there hadn't been any opportunity before. I love the opportunity of competing, and there just were not competitive opportunities. We looked for any way possible that we could to compete, and I always went with the boys at recess. My mother always made me stick up for myself. She was never a person to go and fight a battle for me. She made a visit to school because I was playing flag football every day in recess with the boys. I got in trouble at school for having shorts underneath my dress. My mother made a visit to school, and it was a visit to school to say, my daughter will be allowed to play flag football in PE, and she will be allowed to wear shorts underneath her dress because her underwear is showing all the time, playing, and I'm just not gonna have that. So they made a special rule for me that I could come to school with shorts in a bag, and before recess, after lunch and before recess, I would go into the bathroom, I would put my shorts on underneath my dress and go out and play. And then I had 1 extra minute when we came back in from recess because I would have to stop by the bathroom, take my shorts back off, and then go back into class.
Well, I can speak to what I think about that, and that is, I think in the late 60s and early 70s, women were finding a place in the work world a little bit. People were going to college. I was a first-generation college student, but there were still very defined roles. My brothers, when they were 16, each got a car. Not me, because that was not something young women got. Not that my parents were trying to deprive me, but we create roles for people in our culture, the TV programs we were watching, the culture in which we lived. When I think about my high school, we wore skirts. My phys ed teacher, when she was leaving the gym and going to the office, she put on a wraparound skirt because you didn't go to the office in shorts. Those kinds of things were just accepted.
So back in the early 1900s, even up through 1950, 1960, there was a movement where girls played, but they had to do it on their own, a bit of an underground, if you will, called GAA, and then at the college level, university level, it was WAA, which stood for Women's Athletic Association.
Part of it was Harriet. Harriet was a good athlete. It was WAA time, but she was a good softball player in particular.
Harriet Cornell, the godmother of athletics here at Millikin University, came to Millikin as an educator, a physical educator from one of the local intermediate schools, Johns Hill. When Harriet came, her job was to teach PE, to mentor and academically advise students, And then she said, but we have to give them the opportunity to be athletes. Harriet herself never had the opportunity to be a recognized intercollegiate athlete. She loved to play softball in the summers, she loved to teach PE, but the opportunity to wear a uniform was never in the cards for Coach Cornell. She was going to make sure we had that opportunity.
And we did have some athletes, women athletes in WAA that really wanted to compete.
And the women said, Harriet Cornell, we want to participate. We want to be recognized as athletes. We know we can play, but we want to be athletes.
And so she went to Skip, who was athletic director, Skip Matheson at that time.
And they went over in 1968 and again in 1969 and met with President McKay and said, could we start a varsity team for women? My understanding is the first 2 times they went, the answer was no. Let us think about it. Let us see what happens. Continue with WAA and meet the women's needs that way. But then in 1970, Coach Cornell walked over to President McKay's office and said, I'm here once again to ask if women can wear the blue, like our male student athletes are. And President McKay said yes. And the story goes, Harriet went racing back from Schilling Hall over to the old gym, down to the basement, and was screaming to Dorothy McClure and Ralph Allen, we're in, we got it, we are athletes.
Well, it gave females an opportunity that they had not had before. You know, the females were competitive, but quite often if they were too competitive, they were kind of looked down on. And by giving them organized sports, something that they could be proud of, I think that changed the image completely.
When Harriet Cornell and Skip Matheson and President McKay decided to add intercollegiate athletics, it was in 1970, well before Title IX was passed in 1972. Why did that happen? Because Millikin listened to what the students were saying. Women students wanted opportunity to be recognized as athletes, not just to play. Millikin said, yes, indeed, we will have athletics, and yes, indeed, you are an athlete.
One of my strong feelings is that you cannot legislate equality. What you have to do is get to the heart of people. Yes, we can do things because we have to, or we can do things because we know it's the right thing to do. But I can tell you without hesitation that Millikin wanted to do the right thing for women.
So Harriet Cornell went to PE class and said, would you like to be a basketball team? And that's how Millikin University Women's Athletics was born.
And we did not have any budget for it or anything else, and that's why they ended up wearing football jerseys, hand-me-down football jerseys for equipment.
Kids want to play, men, women, whomever, and they want the opportunity to reach out and afford them the opportunity to continue their athletic career. Just added to Millikin University's success, and hopefully we gave them the opportunity to succeed themselves.
Getting women's sports here, yeah, it helped enrollment, no doubt, but we know what athletics can do for people too. And I have watched people who I know, women athletes from Millikin. I remember Julie Rowe running me over in the middle of the basketball court. I'm standing, I'm a middle linebacker, what the hell, you know? And here comes Julie Rowe, and she's driving for the basket, and wham, right over me.
It's certainly enhanced this institution so much. When a decision was made to expand and number one, start women's athletics, and then to expand to the number that we have right now, it certainly benefited the institution.
Bryce pestered me to death as athletic director about softball. Bryce he was admissions person in Southern Illinois, which is a hotbed for high school softball at that time.
I learned from my field work in Southern Illinois. In talking to girls, I could tell that they wanted to come to a small school and play maybe 2 sports, particularly volleyball in the fall and track or softball in the spring. I went to Merle in 1981 and presented a proposal that we add softball to our intercollegiate athletic program. It's been a good experience for everyone since then because it's always been a winning program. And the reason it was a winner was because of Harriet Cornell and I sitting down and talking about what kind of student do we want to recruit. And in fact, in my proposal to Merle and to the board was that Harriet was my choice for her to be the softball coach. I ended up the proposal by saying, Harriet, if you don't want this, I'll take it.
I always think of coaching as being the epitome of teaching. It's when you're willing to take your classroom and put it onto the view of the world. And there aren't a lot of teachers that would really be willing to do that, but coaches do that every single competition. And so that's Coach Cornell. She was fiery. That's the best word to describe her.
The first 50-year part of our journey has been about providing opportunity for women to participate as athletes. I believe the next 50 years is where women will make their mark as coaches, as general managers, as owners, as officials, as CEOs. Women can and will rule the world.
Not only men, but a lot of women have never been coached by a female. You know, whether it's track or t-ball or volleyball, like it's always the dads coaching it up.
And for a lot of my athletes period, I'm the first female coach they've ever had. So in tennis, it's very common to have mostly male coaches.
Honestly, now when I recruit, I do ask, hey, have you been coached by a female before? You know, not that my opinion of them is going to change, but maybe I can bring a better light to women in an authoritative position, you know, because I feel like getting them to buy into a female coach concept is challenging for some. I have had an athlete who quit the team my first year because he said, I cannot be coached by a female. I will not be coached by a female. No, so the student who actually quit because I was a female met with our head coach.
Had a moment in my first full year here at Millikin where I had a young man we had recruited who was very talented, so a state champion, and there had been some conflict with one of my female coaches, and it sort of culminated in him coming to me and telling me that he could not perform for a female coach. And I was at a total loss to try and reconcile what he had just said. Again, because I don't ever think about it that way. I have one of the best technical coaches in, I think, Division III working on my staff that I've never had any lack of confidence in. And here I have an 18-year-old telling me that he takes issue with something that I consider completely moot.
I mean, I was a little hurt, definitely, because like I said, I want to be the best coach. Men, woman, whatever, I want to be the best coach. And the fact that somebody actually thought that because I was a female, I wouldn't be as good. I mean, it was a slap in the face, definitely. If I had the chance to speak with him, I guess I would just want to know, why? Why does being a woman make you a lesser coach than a male? You know, if it was an age thing, sure, maybe we can talk about that. Yeah, I only have 7 years experience, I get it. But if it's just a gender thing, I don't know. That would be my biggest question. Why? Why a chick? I don't know.
And this is why I think these discussions are so important, is that this young man came from a single parent family. His mother raised him. And the thing that I struggled with beyond that moment was he wasn't going to be a part of our team because that wasn't an acceptable attitude. And I wanted to be able to teach him, but it was his decision to leave the team. So I hate losing people like that because I don't want them going into the world with the wrong perspective. It's one of the hard parts of coaching. You can't change everything, and so that is hard.
There is some pressure as a female coach to hire females as well. With Muffet McGraw again kind of taking her stance that she took last season, there was a lot of pressure because that came out right as I was hiring an assistant. I think that the best applicant should get the job. That's something that is that's going to empower more women as well. I don't think that you should hire a woman just to hire a woman. I think that you should hire a woman because they're the best candidate. If I'm able to do that every time I'm hiring an assistant, it doesn't matter if it's a male or a female. It means when it is a female that they're the best candidate.
Being a female coach and coaching the men's team has been challenging from a recruiting standpoint and sometimes from a training standpoint. I've been doing this long enough now that I can just look at somebody and say, just go check the progress report. We now have event champions, we have record holders on the men's side, but you've got to buy in and you've got to be okay that my coach is a female coach and she's a rock star. And if you don't buy into that, there's not a whole lot I can do for you because I'm not going to change my gender. So you have to determine that I can be the coach that's going to move you where you want to go. And sometimes it's convincing the parents, I'm not sure if he'll be really responsive to a female coach. Then don't bring him here. I don't need him. If you're not going to buy into the program and you're not going to work for me as a female coach, then I don't need you here and you don't need to be here. I can be nurturing and I can be a tiger. I can be like, I am going to call you out, I'm going to hold you accountable, and I'm going to push you to your very best self, swimmer, athlete, student. I've got you if you think I'm your coach. The record shows it. So there is this socialized norm. Only 3% or so of men's teams are coached by women. We've got a lot of road to go on this. And so I hope I'm part of it. I hope I'm part of that change. We have to have us. We have to have women in here doing this to change it, so.
But I remember going to the first meeting where they were talking about Title IX and telling how they were going to go about doing it. It was in St. Louis, and it was very informative, a little bit funny, really, because they started out with saying, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And I thought the people did a fantastic job with Title IX, and they didn't bother going through NCAA. They went straight to the courts. And the courts made the decisions, and there was no question about you were going to enforce it. I have to admit, I wasn't really excited about it at the time, wondering how it was all going to take effect. But in my period of time in athletics, which is a long time, I think it's the most significant thing that happened. And I think it's probably one of the greatest things that happened during that period of time.
You're right, Coach Chapman. Title IX and the opportunities for women is one of the greatest things that's happened, not just at Millikin, but all over. Thank you, Coach Cornell, for helping us get here. What would you say to Harriet if she were sitting here today? God rest her soul.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I can say right now.
Me too.